Good morning from the Florida Keys. I'm going to show you today how I set up my planers and two of my favorite planer baits that I like to use.
All right, guys, you asked for it, and here we go. In a couple of my earlier videos, a couple months ago, we were planer fishing, and you guys asked me through the comments and emails, hey, Matt, can you please go over that a little more in depth and show us what you're doing? So this is it. The first part of the video, guys, I'm just at the house here. I'm just going over 2 or 3 styles of baits I'm going to make up and use. Then we're going to take you guys out on the water, show you how we set the planer, how we trip the planer, and how we reset it again. And then we're going to show you guys a little water action catching some fish.
Okay, guys, here we go. I'm going to show you a couple different ways as far as rigging the hooks. This is a bait strip. This one is obviously not a real bonita strip, but it is a Mylar strip. I've got a whole roll of that stuff, and I just double side tape it, cut it. They work really well. There's different ways to hook this. Traditionally, most guys hook it like that. This little stainless steel wire here, which is, it's 120 pound stainless steel trolling wire. It's a soft wire. So I'll put the link in the Amazon below for that for you guys. But that's what you want to use to put this little ticker on. This thing bends real easy. I'll show you in a second. You pop it through towards the top of your strip, and then you bend it up just to hold it in place. Now when you're trolling, wahoo in particular and kingfish also will do this. Those guys bite a little short. So when they come in and nail the bait, and I've cut wahoo open and had bonita sized bait in them, and I've had bait inside of them that were size of a ballyhoo. First they cut the tail off about this far, because there was a piece of tail laying in one of them, then the whole bait. So what they do is they slam, cut the motor off, turn around, pick up, clean up the rest of the bait once they eat it. So as we're rigging the baits, again, I like to run this through about here. I run a little long on my strip just on the top. Hook goes through this particular one. The hook would go through right here where the bend of the shank of the hook starts, and this, you can see, was pinned through there. I just pulled that off of a bait. When you've got a bait this long, they're going to cut you off like right there. You're not going to hook the fish. You can shorten up the strip a little bit to here if you want, or another option is go to a double hook. And I'll show you guys how to rig the double hook. Sometimes the eye's not big enough to get the barb through it. I'll show you how to do that real simple. A third option would be, and I have not tried this yet, this is a ballyhoo hook. It's a long hook. So let me know in the comments if you guys think I should try that ballyhoo hook, or if you think it'll hold up. It's a little smaller in diameter than the other hooks. I would guess it would handle it, but if you have a big wahoo slam on it, is it going to break it? I would think something else would break first. But let me know in the comments if you guys think that would work. So when you're making your planers, guys, this is like a number 6. If you want your bridle to be just a skosh longer than your biggest planer. So you assemble your planer, you've got a double barrel or double swivels, and I think they're like 150 or 200 pounds. You cut the end of the one off so you can slide it through the planer. To cut it off, I use these guys. So you make your bridle a little bit longer for your long planer first. Then when you assemble your short planer, notice they're the same length. The two planers are the same length. The short planer, to make it longer, I've got a piece of 200-pound mono on here just to extend out that bottom swivel. Okay, so the reason you do that, guys, is the planers are the same length. Otherwise, the short one's going to have a bunch of that bridle will bunch up heavy and can tangle up a lot easier. So that's how you set the planers. So initially, you've got 100 feet of line coming off the back of the planer. I run a 100-pound test, 100 feet of line back to the snap swivel, which you put the bait on. From the front of the planer to the reel, I initially run 80 pound, and you can run the whole reel on 80 pound, but I run 80 pound braid. So the 80 pound is between the rod and the planer constantly. couple of my reels I have spliced down to 65 at about 350, 400 feet. Very important. So once you attach the bridle, on my 80-pound line, I've got a mark on each planer rod. 150 feet up, I mark the line with a black, it's an oil-based Sharpie marker. You can get them anywhere. I'll put a link below. And a 300, so I mark the line 100 feet, 50 feet, and 300 feet. That way, when you're setting the planer, they're not going to get tangled up. You have to have one at 150, one at 300. Or you could use 100 and 200 if you wanted to. I like the 150 mark personally. Okay, with the trolling wire, I'm just going to cut like we'll call it a 5-inch piece here. Run it through the barb of the hook. So you need enough to make this at least a 1/2 inch long. So you're going to want to come through the barb, I'd say 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to take it 3/4 of an inch or so, press it down on the shank of the hook, just like that. Now you take your top piece, and you want to get that first wrap. You're going to wrap around the shank like that. And just, it's a little stiff. I'm just wrapping it around a few times. Like I said, I make it a little longer just so I've got a little working room here towards the end. Handy pliers. I'm going to cut the tail section off on it. Figure out where that went flying to. Okay, so once you get it on there, I'm just going to grab these pliers here. Once you get it on, I'm going to grab the pliers and I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit. And I'm holding the actual end of it here with the shank of the hook. So just snugging her up just a little. And that also, when you snug it up, it also takes that tip end and flattens it out on there. Then you just bend this straight out. Like I said, it's soft stainless. So when you're putting on your hook, you just pop that through there. When you're putting your bait on, you pop it through, and then you just bend it up and it holds the bait on there. You could actually make it a little longer than that too, but that will work. So I'm going to cover basically my favorite couple lures, and I got a couple other setups as well. But my favorite lure for trolling planers that I always have on, one drone spoon. Now if you notice this guy, he's beat up, part of this chewed up on it. He's got a lot of fish on this particular spoon. When you're buying a drone spoon, there's different types. There's types that have like a screw and a nut that go through here, and then the eye of the hook is here. I do not like that type. I've had a couple of them, and the screw rusts out like immediately. So I buy this particular brand of spoon. This is a LB Hunting. This is a 3.5. So one thing I do when I'm rigging my rods, so the spoon on this particular rod, you've got spots where you can throw a hook there or on the bottom here. I've got other rods that don't, or in reels, combos that don't have a spot to put the hook. So I take a little zip tie with a screw attachment on the end, and you can put it above it or below it. Zip tie this on there, and then you can put the hook through the screw portion of the zip tie. On all my smaller rods, I've got them on every rod. So just a little tip. Get this guy out of the way. Okay, as far as the other lures, I was showing you how to do the hooks. This guy's set up. He's got a Sea Witch on the front, this Mylar Skirt in the middle. Now, I run all of them on 200-pound mono. The fish don't cut through it. If you got 100-pound, you get cut off a lot more. So I run 200. I've got a spacer in the middle here, like a 3/4 inch crimp spacer, just to space the head out a little bit from the Sea Witch. This Mylar in the water just adds a tremendous amount of color and flash. This one's set up with a double hook, like I showed you how to do. So I can put a bait strip on here as well, like a bonita strip or something. So that's one way to set it up. Again, with the hook on the front, I've had a situation where I had a really large wahoo on. I was in a school of them. and I got cut off like up here somewhere after about fighting the fish for 15 minutes. Well, what happened is this was sliding up and down, and another wahoo grabbed it and cut it off. So not a bad idea to either put a crimp there or just take a piece of like rigging wire or rigging floss and tie a knot above it. It'll keep it in place. The second one I was showing you guys is like a Mylar strip. Again, I got an extra crimp spacer here for the Sea Witch, pink one on, run the Mylar strip. And here you can see I got maybe an inch past the hook. You don't want to be any farther past the hook on that. I could tip, you could run this through both hooks maybe. I think it'll stay on just like that, but you don't want more than an inch past that bottom hook, or they're just going to cut it off right behind the hook. That'll happen a lot if your baits are too long. The other Sea Witch I've got here, again, I've got the little Mylar head flasher. You can see that in the way the light grabs that thing. It's 3 times as pronounced in the water. So you have to drill that out with a drill. It's not big enough to slide on the 200-pound line, but this has the single hook on it. So the bottom of the bait tolls right at the back of the hook. So when the fish comes and grabs it, he's getting the hook when he tries to cut the tail off of it. It's also set up to put a piece of bonita strip or something on there. When I do that with this kind of a bait, I actually cut the strips in half, so it's about a ½ inch past the hook. So those are my favorite trolling planer baits, guys. All right, guys, here we go. I'm going to show you how to deploy the planer. If you're running 2 of them, you want to set your long first. I'm just going to set this guy out. I like to hand pull the line out the first 100 feet until we hit the bridle. Jigging, checking it out. You're doing it this way. Be sure you don't wrap the line around your hands in case you get bit. Alright, here comes the bridle. So your planer. Once you put the planer on, you want to put the planer on the end of the swivel towards the rod tip on both swivels. We're going to drop him back. Going slow. Resetting it, if you have to reset the long planer, turn the boat. If I had the other rod in that side, I'd turn the boat into the rod so the line pitches on the inside so you don't tangle the 2 lines. But here I still have the planer on the surface right now. Coming back to our mark here. To set it, you just pull the rod back and drop it. It's already set right now. Alright guys, I'm going to show you how to, once your planer's back there, you get it set. If you whip it like that, it comes unset. You just drop the rod, give it a whip, and unset that planer.
Okay, a couple things here, guys. When you first try to unset that planer, you got to grab that rod and whip it pretty hard. It might take you a few times to get the feel for it. There's definitely a little bit of touch when you do that. If you're trolling and you got a lot of weeds, the weeds will slide down on the planer. They do not get on the bait unless you hook them on the bait when you initially drop in. But if you've got weeds on the planer, you're not going to be able to reset it or unset it rather. When you're going to set the planer, you want a little more boat speed going. You see, I just speeded the boat up a little bit there. You need a little more speed to set it, and you need to be going very slow to unset it. It's just a lot easier.
Do that, but I'm going to back to, when you're getting ready to reel them in, you just want to pull the boat down to an idle.
Okay, again here, guys, to unset the planer, you grab that rod and whip it like that. In order to make that a lot easier, you want to slow the boat down to an idle. I just use one motor when trolling, and I slow it down to an idle in order to flip that planer or untrip it like that. All right, as you're putting the planer on the line here, guys, you want to hook the planer to the front swivel towards the rod. I'm at the front part of that swivel, not the back, and the same in the second swivel. Hook it through the front part of the swivel towards the rod tip. Yep, he's up on top skipping. Now the planer's going to come first. I have to take the planer off. Don't reel this planer into the tip, but keep coming, keep coming. Oh shit, hold on. Hopefully this doesn't get tangled in there. Okay guys, we had 3 lines out today. We had 2 planers out and I did have a shotgun way back there. So what happened when that fish hit it, it shot up, went sideways, it got wrapped in the shotguns. So my neighbor Lee, he's out with me today. We're just doing a little fishing, doing a couple other things, setting crab pots and stuff. And he'd never been planer fishing. So seen me unwrap the line around it. I got the planer off and I'm just unwrapping the other line around where the got a big kingfish on here that's coming in. I'm trying to get the thing unwrapped and out of the way. Sometimes you got to go one way or the other to figure out exactly. So I got it on, he's getting the fish up and I'm getting out of the way. So a lot of moving pieces here. This is very important why you always keep the boat going when you're planer fishing. Like here, that's making up for any mistakes we might possibly make. Pick the rod up out of the holder. Hold on tight. Come up this way, come up this way. Walk to your left, walk to your left. Walk to your left. Now reel it in a little more. Reel it in. Stop. Kingfish. Nice. Nice fish. Yeah. On the board. That's a nice one. Okay, put the rod right there in the holder. All right, we got lunch. Woo. Nice job. Yeah. All right, guys, this is a couple days earlier. We're planer fishing again. I got my buddy Blaine and my buddy Captain Todd with Getting Tight Charters out of Big Pine on board with me today. And we're just working a little planer action. It's wintertime. We troll a lot of these. They're very productive. So we're hooked up right here, right now. You can see the fish bouncing on the surface of the water back there. You got to keep the boat in gear, guys, and keep the boat moving. Todd's waiting for the planer to get up. He's going to pull the planer off, and Blaine's going to keep working on the fish. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on everything else, making sure, one, there's a lot of lobster pots out here this time of year. You really got to watch it. It really sucks when you hook that with the planer. No other way to explain it. So I'm watching the boat, kind of keeping an eye on the waves. As you're driving, you're watching where the fish is and you're turning the boat so the fish does not get tangled in the other line. Very, very important. So as you've seen me going back and forth there with the camera, I'm adjusting boat heading. Like right here, the fish is coming up this side. I'm probably going to turn the boat a little bit to the right to make sure the fish stays on the inside corner so it doesn't end up in the propellers. Blaine's job here is, and you guys have heard me in other videos, rod tip out. You got to keep the rod tip out. Todd's got a hold of the fish. He's helping him, going to whip the fish into the boat here. We kind of make a decision on how big they are, if we gaff them or if we pull them in like that. Again, everybody recognize that spoon? One of my favorite baits. So that's kind of some of the things you got to think about as you're planer fishing. Again, we're hooked up on the other rod. Blaine's cranking on it. I'm flipping the rod into high gear here. Initially, you want the rod in low gear for when you first hook the fish. But once you get them coming, you flip it into high gear. I'm looking around, checking the angle of the boat, watching the other line, adjusting right there. I did a heading adjustment. That fish started shooting to the other side of the boat. Blaine had to flip over to the other side. I turned the boat to the right there to get that fish inside inside of the hull and away from the motors. I'm moving the other planer here. I'm moving that to the opposite side because the fish went underneath it or over the top of it rather, to that side of the boat. Again, you can see the fish is burning way out. Now, what's going on here? I'll cue in the boat mic.
Guy thought, nice. Skunk's off the boat. Nice job, Blaine.
I missed his head. You don't like that laying on the floor like that, Todd. Yeah, well, he's not bleeding yet.
You want to stuff him in the live well, Todd, and get that ready, or?
Okay, guys, here we go. Let's pretend the Falcon's heading west here. We're dropping the first planer. So the boat's going straight. We drop the planer behind the boat. This is kind of the angle of the yellow line is your line and your planer behind the boat. A couple different things I look at when I'm getting ready to drop the planer. First of all, you want to check your wind direction, how tall the waves are and stuff. That's kind of a big deal. If I'm in 1 to 2 foot waves, depending on your vessel, and you can go into them or with them and you're not bouncing all over the place, I will set it going east to west initially. If I'm in 3 to 4 footers, I'll set the planer when I'm running the boat in the ditch. My boat's very stable running in the ditch, so I'm going to set the planer in the ditch in bigger waves. After you get your first planer setting out there, before you set the second planer, you're going to make a turn on the boat. You're going to turn the boat about 30 degrees, so when you drop that second planer, it comes off at a different angle, and there's no chance of tangling up the 2 planers at this point because you turned the boat. So as you're setting the planers, guys, I set the long planer first because it takes longer to get out there. As soon as you trip that short planer, it's going to drop down and pull the bait down in the column below the long planer. After that happens, you're going to have a situation like this. This is kind of a side angle of what's going on. We got the Falcon there. I got my planers ran back. Your long planer, it does not have to be a number 3. It could be a number 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as your short planer is a higher number than your long planer, you're going to be fine. This will be how the baits will be running in the water. When you're buying your planers, there's a couple different styles. I prefer what's called a high-speed planer. Now, the planers are scaled based on the weight of the lead on the planer, not on the size of the plate. So the high-speed planers have a smaller plate where you control them, up to like 8 knots. If you have a standard size planer with a large plate, it's very hard to do that because it catches too much drag on the water. So here's a complete look at exactly what I've got going on, guys, when I'm trolling. My long line has 300 feet of line, and there's a mark at 150 and 300 feet on each one of my lines. So they're interchangeable. But my long line is 300 feet to the planer, 100 feet to the bait. The short line is 150 feet to the planer and 100 feet to the bait. A little tip, if you go over a school of fish, you're watching your sonar, I hit mark on the fish. I look at my lines to keep them straight behind the boat. And once you mark that spot, you put your cursor on the mark, you know how far back your planer is. You'll know when your planers come over the school of fish. Because if you turn immediately after going over a school, you're going to pull the planers out of the path of where the fish are. All right, guys, some things to think about when you want to be kind of mentally prepared for what may happen. First of all, after you get them set, trolling speed. I think the kingfish kind of like it around 4.5 to 5.5 knots. If I'm looking for wahoo, I'll troll up to 7 to 8 knots. Depends on the current you're running in. Sometimes you can only go so fast with the planers. When you hook a fish, first of all, the fish will come in, they're going to take a swat at it, and sometimes they miss it. If the fish misses the bait, how you tell is the rod is going to pop up on the bite. It's bending over due to the torque of the planer. The rod tip is going to pop up. Usually you'll be able to tell right away if the rod tip's bouncing really hard back and forth if you've got a fish on. If you've got a fish on and he's pulling some drag, it's probably going to be a bigger fish, a lot of times a wahoo. You might want to back the drag down just a little bit on it, on the reel, because there's a lot of torque on it to run the planer. If the fish missed the bait, you want to quickly grab your line, pull out about 6 feet and let it go to reset the planer. A lot of times they'll turn around and grab it again, but if you don't catch it right away, it's going to float the planer, float the planer up to the top, and the fish is not going to hit it again. After you hook a fish, when you're driving the boat, if you're not on the reel, you got to take a quick look. Which way is the fish moving? Moving left or right? Adjust the boat accordingly. Are you in deep or shallow water? If I'm in shallower water, right on the edge, we'll call it 80 feet of water, and we hook something, ideally I like to turn the boat and try to go deeper so the sharks don't grab what we've got on. Sometimes that can be an issue. Keep the boat in gear, guys. Do not back the boat down. Keep it in gear. The rod stays in the rod holder until we get the planer off. If the fish is peeling drag, you'll let him peel drag. If he stops peeling, you start reeling. That's it. Again, we troll 70 to 300 feet. Troll the reef edge. Troll around wrecks. You know, your location may be determined by where the currents are. All things to consider when you're planer trolling. Your equipment. First of all, I'm running like Penn or Shimano style reels. They're big reels. They can handle heavy drag, and they need to be 2-speed. Extremely important. All right, guys. Hopefully this video helps out. And if you guys haven't tried planer fishing, if you got any more questions, just shoot me a comment. If you have not had a chance yet, guys, please smash that subscribe button. I've got 10 to 20,000 of you watching every single month, and I have about 4,000 subscribers. So if you have a chance, please smash that. It helps me keep motivated to bring you guys great content and help improve your fishing. This is Captain Matt, Marathon Sport Fishing, signing off for today.